Hello everyone, welcome to Inside the CCL Season 4. I can't get over that. Still, Episode 3, Week 2. It's been an interesting week. That's all I gotta say. It has been an interesting week. A lot of questions came in, a lot of stuff to go over, and we'll get to that. But first, the results of the week. 30K played Sim in a clean 3-0 from 30K. We got to see a little bit of an off-meta pick, or at least people think it's off meta. Nova. We'll have to talk about that a little bit. Wildheart versus Oxygen unfortunately ended in a 3-1 for Oxygen, and of course I say unfortunately because I am biased as the coach for Oxygen. But Wildheart played very, very well. So props to them actually. Big difference honestly from last season, and in a lot of ways it goes to show just how important the tanking role really is in high-level Heroes of the Storm. It's you talk to an average player, they'll tell you damage is the most important role. In competitive, damage is usually the least important role. It's usually like tank and then healer and then off lane for fights. You can't kill people without damage, but you can't set up kills without those roles being played really well. And you can't save kills from happening in many cases without those roles. So that's actually, it's a huge for them that they have a significant improvement in that slot. Diamond Hands versus Storm was probably the best series of the weekend. It went all the way to 5 games. It was back and forth. It was a nail biter. It demonstrated how hard both teams have been working in the offseason. Diamond Hands, they didn't make a whole lot of roster changes. Their core is pretty much the same. And I would be shocked, actually, 2 weeks in, I would be shocked if Caesar Salad doesn't actually win Most Improved Player this season. At the end of the season, I would genuinely be shocked, because Caesar Salad was considered an okay tank last season, and I think he was an okay tank last season. But he's made some insane plays so far this season, and it's just been a wild difference, and he's continually improving. Like, I think he was better this week than he was last week. So first things first, 30K versus him gave one. Is this Mouth 13 a thing? Isn't the Unstoppable better for fights here? I'm betting that's it. And there was some speculation that this was a ping adaptation. The Mouth 13 is not a thing. It really is good into pure auto attackers who have low CC. So you don't really have that many things you need to Unstoppable. Phoenix is a really good example of a hero that is mostly just pure auto attack. Samuro, like without Burning Blade, also Samuro you can, stack up. Potentially, if he doesn't micro his clones very well, you can actually get the armor relatively quickly. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about Ethereal Existence. Gain 10 physical armor per enemy hero afflicted by Reaper's Mark, up to a maximum of 30. Did this do well? Did this do, an insane amount? Well, and I'm really hoping that this is broken in Spazzo's sheet, but as far as I know, Armored works correctly. Physical damage prevented by armor to hero unit. 126. He prevented 26 damage with his level 13 talent. That's not good, guys. That's not good. That's like he prevented un-auto attacks worth of damage with his level 13 talent. Even preemptively using the Unstoppable would have been better. And it's not competing against very much otherwise. Like, is Mathael not considered a melee assassin? Oh Jesus, he's considered a bruiser. Blizzard, you should put Mathael under melee assassin. Like, Soul Siphon is actually just unbelievably bad. Shroud of Wisdom honestly isn't that bad. Shroud of Wisdom, 2 seconds you gain 50 spell armor for 4 seconds is actually quite good. And there's a fair amount of magical damage in this comp, right? Not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, just having the ability to pre-cleanse yourself and then walk up to a Garrosh so he can't throw you for a brief period of time, and maybe you can step in and get a last right, stuff like that. You don't need to be using cleanse reactively. Yes. So To be fair to Soul Siphon, which is not a good talent, Soul Siphon would have healed for more than Ethereal Existence prevented. So I don't know. This was just garbage. I can see the argument, right? Hanzo has very chunky autos. You're up against an auto attack Zeratul, but auto attack Zeratul, like, you're not actually preventing that much damage because of a good portion of his damage coming from Psionic Strength. You can look at detailed stats here, right? 73k physical damage, 82k ability damage. Even auto attack Zeratul does more damage with abilities than he does with armor, or does during like physical attacks. That's overall altogether. We can go over to Spazzo's sheet, and you guys can see Zeratul. Physical damage Delta Heroes 16k, spell damage Delta Heroes 13k. So it is a little bit more physical damage in the end for Zeratul, but like, it's pretty close to 50-50. The spell armor is 50 spell armor, right? Like, spell armor theoretically would have been better there, even. So yeah, not a lot going on. Meme Blade. So of course Genji, played by Porky, did take Dragon Blade. And here's the thing about Dragon Blade. Dragon Blade is not that bad, but since its last round of nerfs where they removed the E reset from the level 10 and put it on the level 20, Dragon Blade is essentially only better at 20 than X-Strike. X-Strike gives you some iframes, it gives you follow-up burst, and burst potential usually counts for more in competitive HOTS than any kind of sustained chip damage. But also, in order for Dragon Blade to be good, you need to either be into a comp that can't deny it, or you have to have something that hard enables it. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later because we had a similar issue in a game in our auction series. So Bunker denies Dragon Blade, Poly denies Dragon Blade. The fact that Zeratul is like never going to be a target, he can just always blink out and chill on the edge of fights, especially AA Zeratul because he gets the cooldown from his level 1, is not a target. They have a comp that very much wants to all in and delete one target with last rites, so you should go X-Strike. But also, there's more. If you're going to go Dragon Blade, you are playing for the 20E reset. That's what you're playing for. That means you have to go full E-build. If you don't go full E-build, which was, of course, meta when Dragon Blade was meta and had E-resets, you're simply not going to get the level of value necessary. Also, oh, I closed out. I didn't mean to close out. I'm so sad. I was fast-forwarded to a point in the game because I wanted to show you guys something. Now I have to re-fast forward through the game. Hard enablers, by the way, for Dragon Blade tend to be stuff like Divine Shield. You can do it with Sanct versus an all-in comp and use the counter swing. Yep, full E-build means the 13E2. You are looking for the CDR. So for those of you who don't... Do I have a talent calculator somewhere? I do. So full like water, each enemy hero hit with a swift break reduces its cooldown by 3 seconds. You can actually run out of mana with this talent. Like, legitimately, you can just run out of mana because of the resets. It does a lot. We're still fast forwarding. So this is a fairly technical criticism. So here's the other thing about Dragon Blade. When you go Dragon Blade, you really need to know when you're committing to a fight in advance. It's not something you can be like, oh, the fight's happening. Let's get going with the R-ing. And the reason for that is you can never, ever, ever do this if you want to optimally use Dragon Blade. So Dragon Blade, you'll notice, has an animation right there. So see there's an animation before you're actually allowed to swing. Currently we're on a 0.2 second cooldown for the swing. And we're swinging in. So we've already missed sort of the burst potential. And the reason that is hugely significant is there's a way to cancel that animation. So if you're going to play Dragon Blade, it's not enough to be like, oh, Dragon Blade is good here. It's never enough to be like, ah, this is good here. You have to actually be able to execute with the ability. So I'll demonstrate it in try mode real quick. If you want to play Dragon Blade in competitive HOTS,
choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
You can actually animation cancel that R with your E. Oh my god, didn't hit it. I'm gonna set the game speed to slow so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So again, this is R without, right? And then there was a delay before I could do the thing. Now I have to wait for it to expire because we're in slow mode, but it's fine. But you can cancel the animation by doing RE, and now I can swing instantly. And that's why you need to know beforehand whether or not your team is actually hard committing to a fight, because you have to be able to R and then immediately E in. And that's why stuff like Divine Shield is really good. That's why stuff like Sanct is really good. Because if the Tyrael Q's in at the same time and you E directly into a Sanct, and then you're just swinging at the entire enemy team that's like all around you, but you're totally fine. That's cool. Divine Shield, the Uther knows to Divine Shield you as soon as he sees the R, because you're going to immediately E in and just start R'ing people. It's just not worth picking if you can't actually execute it. I don't know also if playing around a level 20 power spike is worthwhile, and the Shuriken build was buffed pretty substantially. I don't know how substantially it was buffed versus how much people just weren't aware of how strong Shurikens already were. But the fact that if you're going to go Dragon Blade means you basically can't go any of the cool new Shuriken talents, or the cool buffed Shuriken talents, I guess, is problematic. Dragon Blade may be the weakest it has ever been in competitive HOTS, but even so, there are going to be games where it's good, but you still shouldn't be picking it if you're not executing with it. Sim versus 30k game 1 and 2. Why Blaze over Hogger in these drafts? Blaze, people have basically remembered Blaze is good. I want to ask you guys a hypothetical question, and you can see how you feel about it in your head. What if you could pick a hero that gave everyone in your team an ice block? Like you could just draft a hero, and then suddenly everyone in your entire team has a button they can hit that gives them ice block. How overpowered do you think that hero would be? Now, Bunker's not quite that. Bunker is... It has a short channel time. The Blaze has to play really... No one gets in Bunker. Actually, I've been more impressed with how many people get in Bunker this season of CCL, specifically just the last 2 weeks, than I have in any previous season. This is a true story. There was an entire season of CCL where no one on any team got in a Bunker except for people in Oxygen, and we drilled that. Like, we specifically practiced getting into Bunker in Customs. There was an entire season of CCL where we were the only team where anyone got in Bunker. But this season, there was a 4-man Bunker this weekend. Like, legit, there was a 4-man Bunker. 4 people got in a Bunker. It was ridiculous. It was just OP. Yeah, Bunker is honestly one of the single most broken things to ever exist in competitive HOTS. In addition to that, Blaze is... he's not an ungankable offlaner, but the only way to really gank a Blaze is for him to misplay a little bit. Because Blaze really has to be so far out that he can be body blocked from 100 to 0. Any 2 heroes can body block a Blaze to death pretty convincingly. But it takes long enough to kill him that frequently someone on his team can rotate. And in addition to that, he makes every auto attacker feel miserable. If you get oiled by a nanomachine coding Blaze, it's just, it's rough. So, and honestly, you guys haven't... You'd have to go back and watch HCC games to really see the potential of what Bunker can do. Bunker used to be used to, like, Blaze would flank E into people from the backline as the tank went, so the follow-up CC was there, and then he would bunker, and the bunker would body block the kill. And you can fort dive with it. There are game-ending plays that have been made with bunker, because if you bunker under core with the 20 and everyone gets the 50 armor and then you all get out, like, not only have you done extra damage to the core because of the flame stream, it's very unlikely the enemy team will be able to kill you through the armor. And so you can just all in core and focus it. Like, the amount of stuff that Blaze does in fights, and that he enables specifically with bunker, that no other hero can enable in the same way. It used to cast immediately, but, like, people would auto-attack, get in bunker Q, and then get back out. You can still theoretically do that, because even though entering has a channel time, getting out is still instant. Do we see people doing that? No. Like, Blaze is just kind of overpowered. That's what it comes down to. Also, people aren't even, like, using the 20. People are using the 20 for the armor, but there have been very few oils thrown out. And I want to point out that... Oh, this game didn't even get to 20, so I can't. I was gonna use that instead of... Blaze is not a tank, by the way. Blizzard, please fix. Occupant casts oil spill from bunker drop. You notice it says oil spill? You notice it doesn't say untalented oil spill? It just says oil spill? Anyone else notice that? So level 20 bunker means your entire team can cast nanomachine coating. You know what makes it really hard to die? 50 armor and the entire enemy team is living in the Enron link from the Gulf of Mexico, and their attack speed is slowed by 15%. But you know what you have to do to use this button? You have to get in the bunker. I may be tilted at how few people are getting in bunkers. It's possible. So Blaze currently has like a 70% win rate in CCL this season. And obviously it's a small sample size. Like, I'm not going to say that this is like an overpowered sample size, right? It's just 20 games. However, people could be playing around Blaze better than they are, and he's still at 70%. Countering bunker, by the way, was a source of a lot of tech thinking. There was a lot of experiments, specifically during HGC, to counter just bunker. I remember Genji at one point tried an amateur opponent Artanis, because amateur opponent does bonus damage to anything that's not a hero, including bunker. Like, there were a lot of experiments based around how do we counter bunker in competitive HOTS. So, why not Hogger? Because Liam's good at Hogger? Because Blaze is ridiculous. Was it worth it? It made the laning difficult because you can't double soak as Artanis, really. If Artanis had slightly more wave clear, honestly, it would probably work as a counter, but currently it puts too many constraints on your draft. And that was the conclusion they came to. We only saw Artanis played by Genji as a hammer counter, which is okay. It's difficult. It's a fairly technical way to counter hammer. But we did see it. But yeah, there's a lot of things that can theoretically counter bunker. If people are going to be letting Blaze through drafts, and if people are going to actually be getting into bunker, we're going to have to see people starting to bring some of that back. Game 2. Why Falling Sword over Blessed Shield, specifically into ETC? And then there's a follow-up question to this. How well did the ETC pick out? Would you advise picking ETC in Johanna? Would you say Cattle bullied the matchup as hard as he could have? No, because he never condemned on the slide. For those of you who don't know, there's a tech where whenever you're into a mosh pit ETC, you save condemn, and you sort of push yourself up very, very aggressively, and then as he slides, you reactively hit condemn, so that the condemn will go off after the slide has finished, and ideally while they are casting mosh. And then the condemn, because condemn doesn't get interrupted when you get stunned, it'll just go off, it'll interrupt the mosh, and then the ETC has overcommitted looking for that mosh, and now he's dead. We didn't see that this game, and that is the single hardest punish you can do in the Johanna ETC matchup. But there really is no world where ETC should beat a Johanna. You can make an argument that it comes down to what the backlines look like, and so who's going to take more poke damage, essentially. But Cattle bullied it hard enough. I think Cattle did everything in the matchup to bully the ETC except that thing. Apto played okay, but it's a one-sided matchup. And it was drafted into the Johanna, right? So Johanna was picked in the 3-4, ETC was picked in the 4-5. There were other tanks up. I don't really know why the Johanna or the ETC was picked into the Johanna. This is one of those things where it might be a comfort thing. Opto, of course, role swapped to tank because Simplicity was discovered that not being able to talk to your tank makes competitive HOTS basically impossible. I'm speculating on that. I don't actually know that that's why they swapped, but it's the only... I mean, why else would you do it, right? And I'm not familiar with Apto's competitive history. I don't know how often he's played tank. So, to go back to the next thing, Korea likes ETC more too, which is weird because during like HGC, Korea really didn't like ETC. EU was the biggest ETC region of the major regions. So, that's a little strange. But, I don't know. But back to the question of why Falling Sword. Because this hero exists. So Falling Sword versus Blessed Shield very frequently comes down to, can we one-shot someone off of Blessed? If we can one-shot someone off of Blessed, if we have like a Jaina or a Li Ming or something, you generally go Blessed, you get your one-shot, and you go home. Sometimes you're worried about pull, stuff like that. If, however, the enemy team has some sort of one-shot potential onto your team, Falling Sword is generally better. So here we have Maev with Disc. You can Disc. If someone gets Disc and you Falling Sword them, they won't get silenced. They'll be after the thing expires, they'll come out unstoppable. That's huge. It is a really good counter to Hogger because it cleanses the slow from Pummel, which is huge. It cleanses the pull from Maev Bind. It cleanses Malf in general. Malf is a hero who can generally live as long as he's not CC'd and he has good Q uptime, especially when you have Moonlit Harmony, which we go in here because it gives you the burstiest heal, but you have to be able to push the button. Mephisto, especially with W build, and Hanzo are both poke heroes. You are guaranteed to win long fights. So Falling Sword is defensive, Blessed Shield is offensive. This is a defensive comp. This is a comp that is guaranteed to win if it can just win by attrition. The only thing that can happen is you can make a mistake and get 100-0'd by some sort of CC. A team-wide 2-second unstoppable prevents that from ever being the case. We saw Liam pop Pyromania before Jet Propulsion a few times in the game. Did it in game 3-2. He didn't go New Habit, so I'm not sure what's going on here. This is just one of those things that's like, it's technically a mistake. So Pyromania, for those of you who don't know, is Blaze's trait. A lot of people use this for the armor, because it gives you 40 armor. You generally, in competitive HOTS, use it... I'd call it maybe 50-50. You use it for the armor when you E in and make a mistake. So if you like E in and miss, you're like, oh, okay, I'm out. I'm out. But it is better, if possible, to always use Pyromania proactively for the damage. And here we're going to just pop Pyromania and just walk around this dude. So 374 damage at level 1, right? Over 4 seconds, right? So it's not like an insane burst or anything. But it does give you that little bit of extra damage. If you go back and watch like HGC replays, you would frequently see Blaze. You'd see the tank try to stun someone right as waves were collapsing, like right at the mid-fight. Blaze would follow up and just immediately pop Pyromania. The thing that popping Pyromania first can do is it can prevent swing damage back onto you, and you don't, because you don't get stunned, right? Yeah, it does let you have kill threat in the offline P13. You can also pop it just to clear a wave. There are matchups that Blaze cannot get Prio in without using Pyromania, but if you use Pyromania, you can just use it for wave clear, and then, woo, I'm out. And now you have rotational Prio. That is a totally valid way to be using Pyromania as well. But the point being that a lot of the best uses for Pyromania are actually its damage and not the fact that it's armor. So what does popping Pyromania first do? Well, popping Pyromania first prevents counter swing damage. If you try to be like super optimal about it and E in first and then D, but you immediately get stunned as you E in, well, you won't be able to pop the D, you won't have the armor, and you won't do the damage. Also, the damage is over 4 seconds. In competitive, you're generally concerned about damage in 2 intervals that aren't like poke wars where the fight can go on for like 20 or 30 seconds. It's sub 1 second damage, because 1 second is generally how long save mechanics take. Ancestral's a good example. It takes 1 second to go off, so if you can kill someone in less than a second, Ancestral will never go off. That's good. And then sub 2.5 to 3 seconds levels of damage. 2.5 to 3 seconds is the duration of 2 CCs usually. So like an initiating Muradin stun would be 1.25 seconds, and then this stun is 1.25 seconds. So that gives you 2.5 seconds of CC. And if you can kill someone during that time period, they can kill them during the CC chain. That makes sense. So what popping Pyromania first allows you to do is have the damage be guaranteed in the interval where the damage is most relevant for potentially one-shotting people. So you miss out on, 2 ticks? Yeah, you miss out on like 1 tick, right? Because it's every half second. You miss out on 1 tick of Pyromania in exchange for a slightly larger margin of safety in terms of the counterswing. And obviously, if you have new habits, which is the talent that gives you Unstoppable, you make it far more likely that the E is always going to connect. So there's never really a time where it's that bad to do it in that order. Whereas there are definitely times where it is very bad to not do it in that order. Is Nova a meme pick for the they have picked it before factor as the season continues? Honestly, I think Nova's been underrated for 4 seasons? Yeah, 4 seasons now. There are definitely heroes that Nova really punishes. There's definitely things that Nova can cause to like just perform differently. One of the things that we'll see that I know really good Nova players can do, for instance, is Nova can counter Blaze E, especially with Hollow Stability, which increases... actually, this shouldn't be Hollow Stability. This should be the CDR. When you go CDR at 4 on Nova... Andrew, what are you doing to me? If you go Rapid Projection, which reduces the cooldown of Hollow Decoy by 60%, it's basically always up. And anytime you see Blaze about to E, you can just cast Rapid Projection in front of it, and then the Blaze E just hits the projection, and it doesn't ever hit your team. That's pretty good. There was a player named Faye who used to block every single Stitches hook with Wisps on Lunara. You can actually do a very similar thing with Rapid Projection on Nova. So Nova's really good at blocking skill shots for the team. And you're just going to have to... It's sort of just a thing you have to practice, right? You can block Muradin Stormbolts. I think we actually saw a couple Muradin Stormbolts blocked this game with clones. Nova's damage is pretty good. Yeah. Not a lot in the siege damage department. Basically tank levels. Oh yeah, works rating Junkrat traps, true, that is true. But 48k hero damage. You know, second highest hero damage this game. Pretty good. Dahakatung. Dahakatung's easier because there's a delay on Dahakatung itself, but it's a little bit harder because Dahakatung is relatively short range. And it doesn't have as big a telegraph. But it is possible. It is very much possible. So Nova's only real weakness is she's slightly immobile. But she can make up for that in a variety of ways just by playing well. And she lacks any sort of macro early game. And then even late game, she only has macro if she goes Precision Strike and uses a Precision Strike on waves. which from level 12 onwards will actually clear the wave. It doesn't clear it right at level 10. You have to wait for level 12. She has to scale a little bit to outscale the minions. But global wave clear is never, like, global wave clear is not bad, right? And then she still contributes fairly significantly in fights. It's not a meme pick. Andrew really thinks Nova is good. I've talked to Madara since season 1 about how I think Nova is good. Level 16 is where she gets wave clear. I mean, you don't take that talent, but sure. if you go the wave clear talent at level 16, you will have wave clear, but then you won't have a good build. Triple tap, by the way, because someone asked about this as well. Triple tap is really good at killing frontline. That's why you go triple tap. So Muradin jumps in and you instantly triple tap him. That's a problem for him. That's not good. People frequently triple tap backliners. You don't want to triple tap backliners. Backliners can both A, walk away more easily, and B, they usually, because they can walk away more easily, have stuff that they can use to block it. Basically, triple tap is something that you use reactively to frontliners being slightly overextended. And there's a lot of frontliners who have a really hard time punishing it. Johanna has a really hard time with getting triple tapped. How do you play anti-armor shells and level 16 armor shred? Do you overlap or just overlap them? Because this is all armor. This is just physical armor. So just let it go. Oh, he's holding clone till retreats? You can body block with clones. That's a totally valid thing to do. Again, it's better if you're a rapid projection. Oh, triple tap? Yeah, well, it's possible that the tank wasn't overextending, right? I can say if Muradin just YOLO jumps in and no one else on the team can reach you, you can just triple tap. It's possible that just never happened that game, right? You want to see, if you want to watch some games, look up Droplets here on Hero's profile and download his Nova replays. You'll see Droplets just punish tanks for overextending constantly with triple tap. It doesn't always get a kill. And honestly, the only problem with using triple tap that way is that triple tap has a relatively long cooldown. If triple tap had a shorter cooldown, you would just rip it, even if it wouldn't get a kill. If it chunks someone enough that they have to back, it's fine. You just have to wait till they're in a position where stuff can't get in the way. And actually, Porky made a couple good plays where he stepped in front of the triple trap and deflected it. Like he was trying to do that. So there can be counterplay, right? I'm not sure if Nova was that good in this draft specifically. Because it was last picked, right? Like, they see the entire enemy comp and they're like, Nova. Nova's okay into Brightwing. Nova's okay into Lunara. Nova's not that great into Genji. Because you have to play very conservatively with your positioning or Genji can run you down. Nova's not that great into Muradin, and Nova's sort of a skill match into Dahaka. So this is not a draft where Nova is insanely good, but it is a draft where Nova is at least pickable, I think. And it still performed really well. Game 3, I need the video. Who has the best hair, Justin, Grubby, or Baja? I mean, Baja doesn't have hair, right? So is he even in the running? Is the absence of something also that thing? Justin and I allegedly are basically the same person, so I might have to vote Justin just for pure narcissism. First Bruiser Invade goes poorly, but is the correct call given Sims Comp WinCon? Yes. If you are double, or even, dare I say it, triple global, if you have a lot of rotational ability, you should invade things. You should invade them. So Nova's showing bottom. Dahaka goes out of vision. Apto barely gets on the point in time. But here's the thing. Apto should say, I'm about to jump on the point. You need to Z. And we should see the little circle of Dahaka's Z before Muradin jumps on the point. So he jumps on the point. He's like, I'm on the point. I'm on the point. Save me. Save me. And then we see the Dahaka Z like way later. I didn't actually check the replay to see if Dahakazi was on cooldown. I just assumed it wasn't, because what would he have used it on? I didn't see him. I don't remember seeing him Z actually. If it was on cooldown, then this invade is wrong, just fundamentally wrong. But like when you use these globals, you have to use them at the same time. Also, when you play for an invade like this, oh, he's from the. Oh, Jesus Christ. When you play for an invade like this, you have to play for the point. You can't play for kills. You have to be hitting whoever's on the point, because if you lose it, if you lose the point into a bruiser invade, they now all have 20 spell armor. You just won't win that fight. Like it's not possible to win the fight at that point. So Legacy runs out, Kira runs out. They're all actually hitting cattle here. This is good. But then, see, they swap. They start hitting other people. Everything just needs to be on cattle all the time there. Until cattle is dead. Until cattle leaves the point, you just keep hitting cattle. Nothing else. So it's not that the bruiser invade was a bad idea. It went poorly because of very poor execution. It is a very good call for their comp. If you can steal bruisers, and then your bruisers are already pushing, and you get all the top shots as well, like you're massively ahead. You'll be ahead by at least a full fort potentially. But if you've already Z'd, did he really Z for the camp invade? And then it was on cooldown. Oh, he actually did. Did they mess this one up too? Wait. Oh no, they played for the point. See, that was fine. They played for the point and they got the camp. And now they should just leave. Yeah, like, do that. Everyone comes at roughly the same time. You play for the point, you get the camp, and you leave. 133, so it'll be up at 248. Yeah, he literally Z'd on cooldown. Yeah, you can't do this. You absolutely cannot do this. You have to play around cooldowns. I don't know if 30k knew Dahakazi wasn't up, right? Because not a lot of teams actually do timestamp cooldown tracking, but they might have sensed it wasn't up. Like I've seen people be like, "Oh, Arrow's not up yet," when Arrow was up, and I've seen people be like, "Oh, Arrow's up now," when it had 20 seconds left on CD. Most people like do it by feel. I know in League it's very common for the support to timestamp cooldowns. They just type in chat when an ability was used, and then if you know the cooldown, you know when it's going to be back up. Hot teams don't do that, but pro players generally do have a sense of when an ability is up, but generally not to like, oh, it's up in 4 seconds. They don't have that kind of precision. Yeah, you can't make that invade. So here's what they thought. I mean, and you can make an argument that what they thought was going to happen was they would jump on point and get a kill, but even like this. So A, we've already used Stormbolt. So we're on the point at 241. At 245, everyone else is here. That's not acceptable. Ideally, you literally want everyone here at the same second. You can even make an argument that Brightwing should have started Zing on the Muradin before he jumped onto the point. Just so the Brightwing would already have been there. And also the Brightwing could be here and like chucking stuff over the wall as opposed to in this pit. Good idea, poor execution. You guys have to look at the minimap for this one. 10:30-ish game time after 30k wipe sim. Any reason Porky shouldn't go top and try to steal some shots? No, he should go top and try to steal all of those shots, in fact. So here's the thing about Sky Temple. This is just sort of fundamental to the map. Every structure on Sky Temple matters because theoretically, if all buildings are down, one temple will end the game on core, right? So unless you push to end, the objective will never end until everything is dead. Like, literally everything. right? So every shot matters. But every piece of damage you get from a temple is also a piece of damage the enemy team does not get from a temple. So taking a temple should really, in most cases, count twice. If you think about it in terms of the value gotten from the objective, you not only took something and got something that is relevant to your win condition, because it's always relevant to your win condition on Sky Temple, you also prevented the enemy team from getting it. So if you can ever get free shots, you should just get free shots. The only exception is if you're like so far behind that shots won't make a difference. If you're all keeps down and they're 3/4 up and there's 2 temples, you gotta go fight them over a temple. So Porky actually clears the wave here. So he goes up. You can see he E's over the wall, or D's over the wall, E's the wave, and then goes right to the temple. You can make an argument that not going right to the temple and actually picking up that soak even was wrong. You could make that argument. He does get a lot of the shots, and then he leaves. I think he leaves way too early here. If you're already mounted, it's like Sky Temple is the tallest map top to bottom. I believe that's still true. It might be Warhead now, actually. But it's one of the taller maps top to bottom. If you leave Boss, it's like a 12-second ride from Boss to top temple. Right? So even though he eat onto the point, Boss was capped as he got on the point. So E is going to be back up. He has... And his fort's still there. He can still get there. So he can stay here for at least 12 seconds. From the time Boss is capped. 13, actually, because you have to count for how long it takes to mount. So 42. 54. He actually stays there for... he stays there for the minimum amount of time. But Hanzo shows mid. Right? Hanzo's showing mid, clearing the wave. You're not that worried. You know someone's on bot temple. Because those shots are being shown. Nubarak briefly shows mid, and then Hanzo shows mid. So, like, when you're on the temple like this, you should just be looking at the minimap and being like, when do I need to go? 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 Porky leaves really early by that metric, especially since he has a fort, which makes diving him relatively dangerous. And bear in mind, like, look at the minimap. Fort's alive. Fort's barely alive. 3 keeps alive, 3 keeps alive. If Porky steals more shots here, his team, you could actually argue that Sim is ahead in this game. Right? It's unlikely that he's going to get the entire temple, but if they don't rotate and he gets the entire temple, there's a realistic scenario where Sim comes out ahead because of that. How did Cure do on Hanzo this weekend? Scatter, accuracy, etc. This question brought to you by Cure's teammate. Jesus Christ. The answer is not great, honestly. So there's a few problems with Cure's Hanzo play. So Hanzo has pretty significant mana problems in the early game, and even though it's on a 20-second cooldown, E costs 50 mana, and spamming E on cooldown generally is the thing that can push you over the edge to like having to back before an objective. So Scatter is by and large good enough as a scouting tool for Hanzo personally. So if you're ever like, I'm not sure about that bush, you want to scatter the bush. Ooh, Squeaky Week, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. You generally want to scatter the bush. You don't want to E. The persistent vision of E is more valuable for your team than it is for you. So like you put it in an area where your team might want to rotate through it, or it makes it so your tank can wrap without getting snapped. Yeah, Cascon's way of putting it is good too. You scatter when you're scouting, you E when you know where they are, because you want your tank to be able to see them. Your E is for your team, your W is your scouting tool. So that E was okay, because it's on the vision, but his team's... If his team wants to play for the point. If his team doesn't want to play for the point, then it's pointless. Right? I'm going to spare you guys the anxiety. Kira finished stacks at 4:11 this game. 4:11 is actually a good finishing time. So we have no criticisms there. His stacking scatters were good enough that he managed to finish, 3 minutes before what I would consider, or 3 to 4 minutes before the range I would consider the absolute maximum. But then we have, so this is a decent scouting scatter, right? It covers the area of the map that you're concerned about the rotation happening through. You guys can see by looking at the mini map that actually reveals the meridian, so it actually did get a hit. Reasonable Q accuracy so far. That was a bad scatter. Notice, by the way, Kira completely out of mana. This is a really bad time to tap for mana, incidentally. If you tap before 1 minute, it will... Yeah, I don't know. If you tap before 1 minute, it'll be back up. So, not really great. I'm like, what is that scatter? So, the scatter was intended to go from here to here. But the scatter went from here to here. And if it wasn't for this one random... Like, I literally didn't hit anyone. I actually was tempted to ask Kira if he plays with scatter on quickcast, because that scatter reminds me of people who have tried to play with scatter on quickcast, not lining it up. But you generally want to try to save scatter if you actually want it to hit for when something is CC'd and you line it up on them. But also you want to scatter ideally off of the nearest wall to the target. You don't want to scatter off the nearest wall to you. You want to scatter off the nearest wall to the target. He plays on release scatter. Okay, then he has no excuse. This is the nearest wall to the target. This is not the nearest wall to the target. He can reach both of these. He chose to scatter off of this one. One of the ways you get your scatter accuracy up to the 70 to 90% range, right, is you learn this sort of fundamental thing that you should scatter off the wall nearest to the target. So mana management, not great. Scatter accuracy, although he does finish the quest relatively early. Which wall he should be scattering off of, decision-wise? Meh. He has a scouting scatter. Yeah, it's right here. Oh, this actually isn't a scouting scatter. There's a scouting scatter in a second. That is wrong. More of a splatter, really. So here, I said last week, right, when I said the CCL, which anyone who's watching live knows, and people who are watching on YouTube will know soon, that you shouldn't scatter for wave clear unless you're W4. You can still scatter for camp clear if you're not W4. And he is clearing a camp, so that scatter's fine.
Choose a talent.
And this happened later. I know it happens in bot lane. There was like a perfectly...
Don't think I'll just let you down.
Also, it should be mentioned that Sim brawling is a big reason that he did manage to finish it as early as he did. If Sim was a little bit more conservative with their play, he wouldn't have had as many opportunities to get the stacks. So that's why in the higher the level both teams are, the longer it actually takes to finish scatter stacks, usually. Because you generally get to a point where you actually have to have a team fight to finish them. People aren't just going to take random stacks from... People aren't just going to give you random stacks in the early game. That was a good jump.
Choose a talent. Say that which is unseen.
I want him to go back bottom because that's where he had the question. Oh, he dies.
The habit of returning in like
Oh yeah, Kira plays too far up and dies several times this game.
I am with you. Keep them away from our fort.
Come on, do the scatter. Do the scatter. Do the scatter. So, don't do this. Uses E again there. Again, this could have been a scatter for scouting the rotate. It doesn't need E.
dragon's eyes.
I'm making a tactical retreat.
So that was actually a pretty good scatter because Genji, he knew Genji was in the bush, right? Genji shouldn't have stayed. And then here, that's a relatively good scatter. Although,
Watch
you
it.
could argue it's a little early. Again, didn't need to either. His tank was going to ward the rotation for him. Bad use of mana. I don't like that scatter.
My magic flows through
This is why I should write notes.
guardians.
That's a bad E. Persistent Vision for his team. This is the most important place to have Persistent Vision right now. It doesn't need to be on the top side like that. So that was a really good scatter because he went down and scattered it at an oblique angle so that you would get as much reach as possible. That's generally what you want to try to do for a scouting scatter is get a very oblique angle so that you get a lot of distance into the enemy team side of the map. The problem is he doesn't always do that for his scouting scatters. And I'm pretty sure he was trying to stack there and not... Well, he's actually done with stacks. I'm pretty sure he was trying to do damage there and not actually stack his scatters. That scatter was good. Little baby D over the wall. Really nicely timed out there by Cattle to hit the Dahaka when the E's going to come up. And he still has the Unstoppable. It doesn't really matter because the knockback at 4 wasn't taken. But he would have been unstoppable when the Dahaka popped up. So it would have counterplayed the level 4 as well. Really, that's a really good timing from Cattle. So here, Kira backs up, arrows over the wall, completely out of vision. Make sure he even had the thing over his head, right, indicating that there was a wisp somewhere. Gets rid of that. The arrow misses. That's a prediction problem. You need to predict where the fight's going to go, but the actual act of backing up out of vision is good. That's ideally how you want to use arrow all the time. Awkward scatter there because the minion wave is still alive. Can actually absorb. We're going to get to see another example of how not to use Dragon Blade. So lots of little things. Some things really good. The arrow is really good, although there's an arrow later that is literally for self peel. He's a little too far forward. His E usage is questionable. Good Q accuracy, but I know what everyone's here for. He had 20 teamfight scatters. He had 90 scatters total cast. And of those 20 teamfight scatters, where his tank was either already CCing the target or was in range to have CC'd the target, so they could theoretically have gone on the target and gotten the blow up, he hit 8. He had a 40% accuracy for teamfight scatters. Which is on the lower end, shall we say. Just a quick reminder that his teammate, Madara, literally has the highest scatter accuracy of any CCL player. On average, varies a bit game to game. Madara had an Infernal Shrines game where he actually passed 70% accuracy, which is the Rich Poik reset level. So for those who don't know the context, I developed this metric of what counts as a hit, not based on any sort of arbitrary, like, I think this is what should count as a hit. I literally went and watched the best Hanzo players. I watched every Hanzo player in HGC, and I noticed a correlation. I'm not going to say it's causation, but I noticed a correlation between what kind of scatters hit and how I should count them, and the win rate of the player on the hero. Now, obviously, some people play more, but there were 2 Hanzo players on the same team. There was Rich and Reset on Gen G, and that was about the closest I was going to get to, like, what's the difference between good Hanzo play. Rich won more on the hero, even though I think arguably Reset did everything better on the hero except scatter accuracy. Now, it counts as a hit if 5 or more arrows hit a hero, and it counts as a teamfight scatter if there's a reasonable expectation that your team will be able to go, your team / your tank will be able to go on the target. So, or the target dies. So hits count as death, and I think there's even one scatter this game where the target died before scatter hit it, but the scatter would have hit it, so I counted it. That's a little ambiguous, right? The scatter would have hit if the target hadn't just happened to die right as the scatter was being launched. That doesn't count. And it was just that was it. It was people who hit 4-ish arrows didn't have high win rates on the hero. People who hit 5+ arrows had high win rates on the hero. And I figured since there was a clear correlation, I might as well make that the metric that I try to use for whether or not someone's playing scatters really well. Ironically, this might surprise you guys. People with higher scatter accuracy, on average, did less damage as Hanzo per game. Because you can't do more damage if they're already dead. So, like, hitting 3 or 4 scatters, you might have higher damage numbers, but if you can consistently hit 5+ arrows on the same target, they're dead, you can't do more damage. There's an interesting paradox of burst heroes, where the better you get at a burst hero, the less damage you do. Is this the fight where he gets forced back into this corner? Yeah. This is the one where they give it. Yeah. So it was okay. It wasn't. Rich's average was 80%. In some games, he was close to 95%. Reset's average was around 70. Poik's average was also close to 80%. It was like 78% or something. It was just a little bit worse than Rich. Although the actual amount of damage that Poik and Rich did from scatter was nearly the same, but that was because Poik cast more scatters per game. Because Poik played with scatter on quick cast, and Rich played with scatter. He started out playing it on quick cast. He moved at one point. He moved to actual cast, and then at one point, I think he finally settled on release. Hasuab's accuracy in the one public game he has played in CCL so far this season was 55%. I would say Hasuab's average accuracy is somewhere between 50 and 65. His accuracy is actually a little bit lower than it was when he played in HGC. But he was playing Hanzo a lot more. Like, you're scrimming 40 hours a week. Hanzo's meta. For Hasu, it's just a practice thing. Hasu could get to that number if he spammed enough Hanzo. And in fairness, for Madara, it was also a practice thing. I told Madara he had to go practice on scatters, and he did. And I really appreciated that about him. I would tell him he needed to work on something, and he would work on it. It was great. Easiest thing in the world to coach someone who's like, when you just say, you need to go work on this, and they're like, okay. And they do it. I actually have not looked. That's true, actually. That's a good call, Fish. I might actually go look at see if Haas's accuracy is higher in his EU games, because I do have Master Clash games. Yeah, every week inside the CCL chat would remind you to go practice scatters too. Yes, it became a meme. Is 30k overvaluing Giant Killer on Hanzo? They played it all 3 games. Should either of them have been Pierce or even the third option? So Giant Slayer was actually becoming meta right near the end of HGC. And then it was buffed since then. So it's literally the strongest it's ever been. If you are trying to one-shot someone, you should basically always be Giant Slayer. Unless the enemy team has something that will block skill shots. Like if they have a zombie wall, or they have a Zag, or they have a Nubarak, or you're on Shrines, you can get into these debates about would Pierce theoretically have a higher average value given the fact that you can randomly have your scatters blocked as opposed to intentionally have your scatters blocked, which is different. But if you are on a map like Sky Temple where there's not a lot of obstacles, if you're on a map like Alterac, not a lot of obstacles, you should base, and your comp is trying to one-shot someone, which frequently in competitive you're trying to one-shot someone. Even if you don't have a one-shot comp, you would rather just kill someone rather than like poke people for a little bit of damage. Giant Slayer will generally be better. So bear in mind, you're not 16 the whole game. Giant Slayer did 8.6k damage just in the time that they were, after 16, which they hit 16 around 11:45. So Giant Slayer was basically worth 1,000 damage per minute. Pierce is really going to struggle to match that, especially on Sky Temple where there's no tight corridors. And again, burst is better than spread damage, pretty much always, in competitive odds. And I don't think the third option is pickable. With, Flawless Technique is not pickable with W build. If you're W1, you should just never even consider Flawless Technique. Flawless Technique is a really good talent for Q build. You auto Q, auto Q, auto Q, and you get a nice rhythm going. But it's not pickable if you're W1. So I really like that they're going Giant Slayer. And in fact, I've had some games where I wish my Hanzo players would have gone Giant Slayer. But I didn't think about it at the time, to be fair. It's not like I told them to go Giant Slayer and they didn't. I haven't. Picking the right talents is like pretty far down on my list of priorities when it comes to coaching. It's like, can we talk about how we're going to win the game? That's like usually number 1. Talents is like maybe the 8th thing on my list. Unless the talent is required to winning the game. But Pierce is rarely going to be bad. Like it's never going to get no value. That's a very unlikely scenario. Okay. That's the end of the 30k versus sim questions. First, a question for Wildheart versus Auction. Why do you hate fun and pick Garden of Terror? It was up. Like, what do you want me to say? It's Garden of Terror is a decent map. Pierce does make the hero easier. That's a very fair statement. I love this question, by the way. Like, why do you hate fun? Bear in mind that every map that you hate is someone's favorite map. And ban towers, Dan's game. I mean, why wouldn't we ban towers against Wildheart? Hello? Yeah, if you're... Oh, that's true, actually. If you're gonna go Dragon Strike, you should always be Pierce, because you get the CDR from the Dragon Awakens 20 more consistently. But it's not a relevant factor because Kira picked Arrow. Also, I don't think we'll ever see Dragon Strike from Madara again because Cattle hates Dragon Strike. See? J-Shaw, you thought no one liked Hanamura? Raven's friend likes Hanamura. Opie? This is this guy Temple game. God, we got 0 kills. Oh my god. Okay. Can you talk through D-Storm versus D-Shield here? Sure. This should have been D-Shield. I don't. I got nothing. Theoretically, if we could somehow bait the Rhaegar, because Rhaegar's cleanse has the shortest range of any cleanse at 6. If you can get on the Rhaegar with Divine Shield, obviously he can't cleanse himself, and he doesn't get the Ancestral off, he's gonna die to the comp. By the way, this would have been, as soon as they saw that it was Divine Storm, this wouldn't have been a horrible time to go Falling Sword, honestly. Although Blessed Shield is really good in the Genji. To tie back to our earlier question about when do you go which one. This should have been, honestly, this should have been Divine Shield Dragon Blade. I think that was our best chance to win the game. But Yasu doesn't have a lot of experience playing Divine Shield. And Divine Shield in competitive is different than Divine Shield in not competitive. Divine Shield in competitive, with very few exceptions, like we've seen Uther picked as a counter to Stitches, and basically you run at Stitches and Divine Shield the person who get after they come out of Gorge, so there's a chance they can actually get away. That's a defensive use of Divine Shield. The best... CPX wasn't following me? That's weird. Thank you for the follow. The best use of Divine Shields are all proactive in competitive play. You like Divine Shield to Greymane, and Greymane just goes in and tries to wreck everyone as quickly as possible. You can fort dive with it. You can enable stuff that is otherwise very interruptible, like Dragon Blade. But you have to coordinate with someone, and it takes a little bit of practice. If you haven't practiced a fair amount, then it's not great. Spell Shield on Uther? Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Spell Shield isn't even good into this comp, necessarily, but you don't really want to go Spell Shield on Uther, because here's how you want to play Soul Sport Uther. You want to stay in the back, mounted, run in when your tank does, stun someone, heal up some damage that was done, push Divine Shield on someone so they go in, and then you want to die as quickly as possible. If you're not the first person to die in a fight as Uther, you didn't go hard enough. And then either you don't die and your team wins the fight. That's one option. Or you do die, and now you have a bunch more healing because Uther's Ghost actually has insane healing throughput, and you still get the armor. That's ideally how you want to play Soul Sport Uther. I mean, Yasu died 6 times, so he was like halfway there. But he had deaths where he hadn't already pushed all his buttons. Not ideal. It's a transition. You start out passive, and then as your cooldowns get used, you start to end harder and harder and harder. That's the ideal. That's for Soul Sport Uther, by the way. Double support is a little bit different. There's some differences. Final team fight comms. IB Ting Zergling. We can back out here and get shots. Back up. Haben. Go, go, go. Yeah, it was Warida who had a clean ass Uther game. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because someone asked a question about it. I'm a KDA player with Soul Sport Uther. Oh no. Oh no. The worst possible combination of things. A KDA player and Soul Sport Uther. And you've got destroyed this game? Yeah. Yeah. So here, Wildheart is level 20. Oxygen is not level 20. They're just invading the Bruiser camp. Nothing. The temple's coming up, but it's not going to be up yet. This is the team comps.
I'll have Odin, or we can, yeah, top.
We'll just
top
guarantee
into
20.
temple,
Just play
top into
20s, and we just play for temples. I don't know.
temple. Be careful when they take 20 though.
So IB Tings is like, I want to Odin for the keep and leave. IB Tings didn't call that very well, I think, because he was presenting as an option. On comms, you don't want to give people options. You just want to be like, I want to do this, and if no one says no, that becomes the call.
Take it.
That's the best way to...
We can do a little bit.
I'm
I'm not Odining for this. I'm not Odining for this.
So that's wrong. He should Odin for the keep.
Can we get mid or no? You don't want it?
I can get mid in a second. This is hard to push into though. I think we just
Okay,
grab our
that's it,
easies
that's it.
and grab
It's good.
temple.
It's a little bit
Okay,
better.
grab double easies.
The reason, by the way, that you would want to try to Odin down the keep is because if you can Odin down top and on mid keep, the temple then ends. That's way better.
We just get the shots, as many shots as possible. This will get both keeps, and then they have to fight us.
And I'll have Odin for this fight.
Genji's also
so it should
bottom.
be pretty
So they're
good.
all gonna walk through like here.
Just don't get like 4-man D-stormed, and there's no way to lose, I think.
Blaze is split from them,
Uther,
by the way.
Uther. I can slow him right here. If we want.
Going?
Yeah, I'm looking.
That's fine.
Oh,
Haven's not with. Haven's not with.
I have spell armor. It's fine.
big stun, big stun, big stun, big stun.
Nice, nice, nice.
I'm gonna die first.
So I actually think Haven was right. I think when you have an advantage, you should try to leverage that advantage and do something with it. They have the 20 advantage.
I'm gonna no control this.
Don't be results driven. It worked out for them. Yeah, Benny died a lot this game because of his talent choices. But I think they should have leveraged the fact that they had 20. Also, 20 Odin reduces the CDR. So, like, popping Odin into 20, using it to siege, and then backing up, it will generally be back up in time for, like, the next fight.
Help,
I'm out. I'm fine.
So, I actually agree with Aben.
Look at Blaze, look at Blaze.
With the rest.
Just not kill him.
Is there more?
Did we finish kills? Finish, back up. Oh, I think that's it. Haven, back up.
That's it.
Nope.
Careful, Haven.
Go.
We can play. Okay. We try. Okay.
Oh, for this specifically? This is a little bit more.
Bot.
You're not going to kill anyone with the Uther Ghost, right? There's no point in chasing when you can't get any more kills.
I'm trying to walk away.
So if it's just purely about that, then that was just like you don't chase into an Uther Ghost.
There's no one die on the straggle.
You just won't kill anyone.
They're still.
Okay.
Come.
Fine, it's fine.
That was the ideal time for Oxygen to turn around and fight, by the way, when they had the Uther Ghost. Assuming that they can't.
Take Genji. Nice.
You score?
Need score.
Yeah, now.
I mean, Lunara condemned them, right? You can get the Q, which is a little bit of a slow. If everyone else was also running at them,
Core shots.
that was way too late to call it, to be fair. He needed to call that he wanted to run it down when he started running it down and not 3 seconds later. Could he have hit both with
Wait,
Q?
what?
Nice. Whatever. Yeah, now.
Come.
Fine, it's fine. Take Genji. Nice.
You score?
Need score.
Yeah, now we call.
Core shots.
Awesome.
I'm trying to walk away.
We try.
Just not kill him. Kill him.
With it.
Did we finish kills?
Yeah.
Back up. Oh, I think that's it. Haven, back up.
That's it. Careful, Haven.
Go.
We can play. Oh,
Yeah, if he condemned them both. If he hadn't queued, he could have condemned them both, and he would have gotten the subdue.
try.
Which brings me to the next question. What's with all these hold your grounds? Don't go hold your ground. It's not being tracked accurately, unfortunately. I wish it was. Oh, wrong thing. It's not being tracked accurately in Spazzo's thing, unfortunately. But Spazzo's working on it. So times Iron Kingdom's cast was available due to hold your ground, and then it was cast, so you get a sense of how the CDR works. I believe that feature actually does work, so the CDR literally never mattered. But this feature is currently broken, where you track, did hold your ground absorb more damage than it normally would have because of the bonus D. So I would have to go manually look at the replay to confirm that it was actually did anything that game, but at least the CDR was totally irrelevant. Yeah, it's only it's not that much CDR, but like there could be times where you use it and it comes back up and you use it again within the CDR window, right? That never happened. Literally ever. I will say that the increased shield didn't ever seem to matter. Just looking through the replay very quickly. It didn't matter last week when anyone took it. It just doesn't seem to do a lot. For those of you who don't know, hold your ground increases your Iron Skin shield by 40% and its cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds. Yeah, the duration is the same. Maybe if they increase the duration, it'd be a little bit different. Although then they'd have to figure out some other passive for Steed Charge. Or maybe they would stack. I don't know.
Just trying to zone.
816. What are teams fighting over? What indeed? So teams aren't fighting over anything here, by the way. Oxygen is just clearing mid, and Murden is bush trapping, which is just if someone makes a bad rotation, I'm going to stun that person, and my Sylve is going to unload all their damage, and hopefully that person dies. This is not a fight. Fights are something that happens when both teams are around something. This is just trying to look for a pick. But when you're trying to look for a pick and it fails, and the enemy team has time to rotate, you end up in a fight. So, yeah, they don't get the damage onto Copen. Copen gets a good wall stun for the self-build here. Yasu is coming up. We see an arrow. Nick actually uses his ult to gap close. You guys see that? Like this, there's a chance he did this because he's actually thinking that Mason Blaze is going to continue to walk in, so he's anticipating Mason Blaze walks into the ult. But the actual result is that he actually ends up using his ult as a gap closer, so he can get this 2-man spear. It's actually so insane. So we're not fighting. They're not fighting over anything, and that's just a fundamental play issue from Wildheart. And this is one of the most difficult things to do in competitive HOTS, just across the board. If you go for something and miss, you missed. Just let it go. So right here is when they know they're out of cooldowns, and they're not going to get the kill. Murden has jump. Murden can just jump over this wall and be out. Sylv, Hanzo, or no, Blaze ease in, misses. This happens. Sometimes you just miss. Sometimes you're like, I think we can do this, and then you're like, no, it didn't work. Okay, back up. One of the major problems the Korean teams would occasionally have is they all played very, very aggressively. Backing up was just not a thing that they did. And teams would occasionally punish that. Teams would be like, okay, we know you're going to go in every single time, so we're just going to play very patiently until you try to go in, and then we're going to counterswing you. Sanct is a really good counterswing tool. So that was well played by Oxygen, honestly. Wildheart probably should have just given it, but we weren't. Yeah, there was nothing to fight over there. Blaze rotates mid to help self clear bruisers while the other three push top. I think Blaze drops half a wave bot for this. How might Wildheart rearrange things for clean rotations? Sometimes there's just nothing to be done, right? So Blaze comes mid while Murden is going up because Sylv can't solo clear bruisers. If you don't clear the bruisers, they are guaranteed to get chip damage on the wall, and that can end up mattering later on in the game. Mid fort really helps you deal with this top left tribute and the bottom right tribute here that's in the pocket. Gives you a safe place to tap. Mid fort isn't mid's not a very important lane on Cursed Hollow, but mid fort can make a difference, specifically for those two tributes. And since which tribute you get is a little random, but it's always going to be in one of three columns. Every set of three tributes, one of them will be on that side. Like, there's a good chance you're gonna have to fight over it. And moving mid fort removes the advantage, so you don't really want chip damage to happen. Blaze drops a little bit of wave, a little bit of soak. Bottom. It is really hard to double soak on Cursed Hollow. There's not actually many offlaners who have enough clear speed to double soak on Cursed Hollow without missing any. It's not really double soaking here per se. Hogger actually makes a mistake here on an offlane macro level. Hogger could have frozen this wave. Instead, he clears it. If he freezes the wave, he will stack up 6 archers. Those archers will clear the next wave much, much, much faster, and it will cause Blaze to actually miss even more soak. But there's only like 2 CCL offlaners that actually do that. So here, you can see the wave is dying to the towers on the minimap. Blaze is actually going to get there in time to pick up 3 full experience globes, and the rest partials. He actually would have missed all of them if Hogger had frozen the wave. So it's just a compromise, right? Sometimes you have to miss. Ideally, you never miss soak. Sometimes, because of something that's already happened, you have to miss a little bit. And the problem is, at a draft level, it's the Sylv Cassia. Neither Sylv nor Cassia are really safe to be alone in a lane and actively doing stuff. You never want to split your mouth from your Cassia. Cassia really doesn't want to be split from her supports ever. I wonder how much information a gold life player can take away from this kind of streams. I mean, all of this applies to competitive, where you're coordinating with your team. There are gold players in NGS. If you're on an NGS team, stuff like this will be valuable to you. There's stuff you can do. Honestly, the best way to carry in any rank is to shot call for your team, and making good shot calls will cause you to win games. You can shot call with pings. You don't need to actually talk to anyone. Should they have fought over this? This is a clip from Hasu's stream. Oh, it's the same. It's the same thing. I thought that was a different clip. Oh no, this one's different. This is the one. Was this sank needed, or should I have this just backed? I mean, the sank wasn't needed, right? Because the Holy Ground's already secured the point. We also, I mean, we got the boss. We can just back. Also, we've used Sanked, right? We've used cooldowns. We should just back out. If we had just not fought that. Why Shockwave? This game feels very Hortipulty. Shockwave is a really good follow-up for the Imperious Kidnap combo. It's really good follow-up to Arrow because you can just walk up. You can even secure Arrow by spinning in with Pummel, which gives vision and slows everyone. And then as the arrow hits, you cancel it in Shockwave. Hortipult, actually, the only thing Hortipult really does this game is give you a few more wall stuns, potentially, and deal with chokes a little bit, but we already have Holy Ground. I actually think Shockwave was very good this game. Why force boss in vision? Because we'll win it. So one of the interesting dynamics of Cursed Hollow is that if you have boss control that the enemy team can't counterplay, and you have boss race, which we have a W4 Hanzo. Actually, here's sort of a funny dynamic. If Hanzo could auto-attack someone, like an enemy hero, to get the Never Outmatched procs, which is the level 7 CDR talent for W, we would actually do boss even faster. So doing boss in vision can actually help us race the boss fast. But there's an important element. It's not enough to be like, oh yeah, we're a boss comp. We should be doing boss, so we hit the boss. Like, that's sort of simplistic, right? There's a lot that goes on. So, for instance, Hasu is positioned really well here. He can step up to here to get the scatters into the pit. Ideally, honestly, I think Copen would just be spinning on the point with Pummel, because we're playing for the point. We want to kill the boss and then fight over the point because we win, right? Nick actually is in the pocket. If the boss is centrally positioned, there's always pixels around the edge where you can dodge the stun. So having your melee in the pocket is actually really good. If you're playing specifically for the boss point. If you're playing for some other thing, like if you're playing to win the team fight, you can't be in the pocket. You need to be like on a flank or something. Like in this horseshoe of the bush, that's good. Because you're not hitting the boss, because you're not playing for the boss. You're just trying to bait them into fighting you, and then you win the fight. But we have a boss comp. We're just trying to win the point. And then like your tank or your bruiser is generally holding this choke. There's an argument to be made that Nick should be here and Tyrael should be in the pocket, so that Tyrael is the furthest away from the enemy team, because Tyrael is the boss control tool. Right? If the boss control tool dies, you have to stop doing boss because you won't guarantee to win it anymore. So Tyrael is literally the most important hero for this play. And then see what happens with the clump? We clump on the retreat. If we had been positioned properly and had just stayed on boss, this never would have happened. So it's tough. It's really tough to adjust your play based on a different win condition than just, oh, we fight them and we win. So doing boss and vision wasn't a mistake there. It's just the execution was lacking. Should Hanzo have been play of the game for the global here? I mean, no. Honestly, the level 20 fight, was exactly the same issue. It is literally the exact same problem. We didn't position to fight. We didn't position to win the boss guaranteed. We didn't need a global. We just needed to play around our win con. Hanzo is splitting a lot from team to clear Soak. Is that correct? Is the solo range in this game? No. Rhaegar has wave clear. Imperius has wave clear. Hogger has wave clear. There comes a point in the... And Hanzo's W4, so his wave clear's not even that good. It honestly should have been Tyrael Hanzo on camps. With maybe Rhaegar helping sometimes. And not catching. But... Hasu is very good at macro, so when he sees a wave not being soaked, he'll generally rotate to it, unless the team's already calling to do something else, like we need to fight right now or whatever. It's a little bit of a comms issue. It's been a problem on pretty much every team ever that I've ever worked with, too, because usually there's macro players and then there's team fight players, and if you have wave clear and you're a macro player, you're gonna go clear waves. It just needs to be ironed out a little bit. And it's like, it's also just sort of a practice issue. This is a very specific comp, right? This is a very specific style of composition. And I honestly, to some degree, think that maybe the problem was we didn't have enough practice at this particular style of comp. But it's not like we're scrimming 40 hours a week, right? It's hard for CCL teams to have a breadth of styles. Did Sank get cleansed ever? No. Why does he E the wave here? E gives you 3 stacks of your trait when you are Festering Wounds at 7. Your trait doesn't just apply to heroes, by the way. Your trait applies to minions and buildings and camps. You just don't get the notification with the 3 little, arrows indicating that your trait has. So you actually do, when you're Festering Wounds, pretty much always E for wave clear, because it gets the stacks going on the wave, which means the wave takes more damage, 25% more damage from everything you're doing. And then if you W the wave and the W spreads the whole wave, the wave just instantly dies. Not having to fight in the wave is huge for Muradin because of Stormbolt. So waves do a not inconsiderable amount of damage. You generally don't want to be fighting in a wave and just giving the enemy team free damage. And it's not like he only hits the wave, right? He also hits the Johanna. That's just how you use Festering. If you are Festering Wounds 7 and the Wave Clear talent at 4, you can actually E a wave, W the wave, auto attack once to spread the W to everything, take the E. If you time it right, you will actually pick up the globe as you E across the wave, and then you're done. It's literally sub 1 second wave clear, which is nutty. Now, his E is on cooldown here, and notice his tank's on this side, and he's over here. He's like, I'm gonna hit this person. See, the problem there is Muradin's here. Muradin's bot lane. He stepped up in a wave with no one to cover him. On our rotation, I think we actually literally saw on the minimap. Yeah, Lunar's bottom. Yeah, there's 3 here. But you can see how it worked out fine, right? It worked out fine on the first minion wave because his tank was there covering him. He doesn't need a reposition. It's fine. And he's totally safe. And Blaze comes down on the flank. I think on comms, by the way, the Blaze rotation was called late by Copen. If Blaze isn't literally coming out of this bush, Hasu would probably have been fine. But if you don't call that the Blaze is coming down from the top and you rotate up to dodge people going on you, that's a problem. Is heavy impact actually feasible into Blessed Uther Tychus? I don't know what feasible means in this context. You can absolutely jump on people. So here's the thing about Dragonshire. Dragonshire, you're generally playing for picks, so you don't need to think about, oh, their whole team is capable of denying this thing. You're generally thinking about, oh, is this one guy capable of denying this thing? The problem is that they have insane wave clear. They have so much wave clear that they never had to be alone. I actually think, and I'll take responsibility for this. I said that Hasu should go mind control this game, and I, in hindsight, think that was wrong. I think that given the drafts that both teams ended up with, the only way we win this fight is for full-on 5v5s, not picks. That said, heavy impact is still going to help with getting massive wailing arrows because of the slow. Feels like Tass is taking a lot of tower shots this game. Really? I don't feel like we were ever on their side of the map. Boys sound exhausted. Maybe time to swap Ritsu for comms morale boost. Everyone did sound pretty tired to me as well. Why no imposing presence? So imposing presence is a little underpicked, I think. It is really good into Tychus specifically. It's not so much good into other heroes. Into most heroes, all it does is really give you an extra slow, but into pure auto attackers, which Tychus, a lot of his damage is ability damage, but it's because of the percentage damage that comes from his autos. If you negate his autos, you're negating all his damage. It's really good into Phoenix. You can make an argument that this should have been imposing presence. But again, I didn't think of it at the start of the game. Benny didn't think of it. Team Mental is just destroyed. Destroyed is a strong word. We can clearly hear it on Hasu's stream. What steps can be taken to improve this for the next series? I don't know. Improving Mental is a steady thing. Here's the thing that I think people don't necessarily appreciate is this is the first time Oxygen has played. It's only week 2, obviously, but it's the first time we played second set. Everyone on Oxygen is an EU player. It was late for everyone, and that's just gonna be a factor. In season 1 of CCL, when Banana was on Oxygen, Banana was our only EU player. We had Cascom, but he was our sub, right? Banana was our only EU player. The difference in Banana's performance when we were first versus second set was actually large. It was enormous. I think season 1 Auction, we actually won in a 3-0 or 3-1 every set where we were first game. And the only ones we lost, we were game 2. I think that's right. I might not, I don't think that's true for playoffs, but I do think it was true for the regular season. Having someone be tired impacts a lot of things about their play. It can impact their comms, it can impact how responsive they are to other people calling things. So the thing I'm actually working on is figuring out when we have to play second set, how can we not be tired? Because I think that was an issue. Here, by the way, is the same thing. Haben has an advantage and wants to run at the enemy team because we have an advantage. This is also, by the way, why Tass was a good pick here. Johanna really struggles into walls. Same reason Tyrael is good into Johanna with Holy Ground. Johanna really struggles into walls. So Haben thinks he can just walk up and do this because he has his D. You can't do that into a Tass wall. We actually almost come back in the game purely based off of that. But Haben wanted to run at them because of the talent tier advantage. And the rest of the team was uncertain. What happened with the body block on Blaze after the DK? Blaze used the bunker to dodge the body block. And we missed the CC as well. Remember when I said bunker was OP? You know what bunker can also do? It can make you not body blockable, which is one of Blaze's major weaknesses. Yeah. It's almost like bunker is absolutely broken. It feels like Benny's hide and seek game towards late game here is just gone. What happened? He's staying in vision, autoing PvE. It was a hard game. It was a hard game. When you feel like a game is unwinnable, sometimes you're just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't understand. Like, you're trying to think, and you're just, how do I win? How do we win this game? It's particularly harder on shot callers. And of course, Benny was shot calling the series. Anyone who's listening to Hasu's stream kind of knows how our shot calling system works. Soulsport Uther is usually W build. Soulsport Uther should never be W build, in my opinion. But that's a different topic. I think he was W build this game actually, and W build is like stretching the definition, right? It's one talent at level 1. Yeah, he was Q build. But yeah, like when you're trying to figure out how to win the game, other aspects of your play may suffer, especially if you're tired. Hasu seems to think Hogger versus Blaze came down to ease of execution lacking from the Hogger. How do you feel about it? I mean, Hogger, a lot of things that Hogger does, like pummel, get countered by bunker. So even if even if Hogger wins top versus Blaze, which he should, and we did. It is true that everything about Hogger is harder than everything about Blaze, but Blaze can literally push a button and counter, you know, many seconds of setup from the Hogger. So it's awkward. 3-4 Brightwing Z. Z20? Yeah, Z20. You guys remember when I said earlier that there is the damage windows that matter are like sub 1 second and sub 2.5 seconds because that's 2 CCs. Speedy Dragon allows you to deal with the second window. And Brightwing has no way of dealing with the first other than preemptively Zing. So this fundamentally changes how likely people are to get one shot in the late game, which is kind of massive, to be honest. Also, it makes Brightwing herself safer. Having a permanent 20% movement speed makes dodging things just incredibly easy. And there's also not a lot of things, like, generally speaking, the unrevealable from friends is good for stuff that's point and click. So for point and clicks, you have Uther Stun and you have the Tychus autos that are like really spooky, right? But Lunara Q, not point and click. Stacking her trait with R, not point and click. She doesn't even have to stack her trait with autos. Joe, nothing's point and click. So it's like Invisible Friends would only have helped versus 2 things this game. Whereas having the Z go off in 1 second, especially since you can Z in and get a massive heal from Critical Mist into no anti-heal, is much more likely to prevent people from dying. Hasu mentioned that the pick comp felt impossible to play into Uther Joe Wisp. Yes. That didn't feel like a real kill target. Yep. Any thoughts? I agree. It was just, fundamentally it was a draft issue. Like, literally our comp ideally would look for picks. Picks were impossible, so we had to play for full 5v5s. And we realized that too late to, like, change talents, for instance. Game 2 drafts felt similar to Wildheart's Game 4 draft, but felt like Wildheart controlled both games. What did Wildheart do to succeed, or where did Auction fall short? Wildheart just had far better coordination than we did on the day. And here's the thing. CCL is currently close enough where any team could take a game off of any other team. I mean, Auction won Game 1. Like, even though we lost the next 3 games, Auction won Game 1. It's not like this was a completely one-sided series. But your average performance and your day of performance is subject to a lot of factors. And this isn't HOTS exclusive, right? There have been professional sporting events where a player did something stupid, like got drunk the night before, didn't rehydrate, and was dehydrated for a game, and then his performance sucked for the game. He wasn't stressed out. He wasn't tired. He wasn't not getting enough sleep. He was just dehydrated. So as a competitor, one of the major things that you have to do to learn to be consistent is evaluate the things that impact your performance. Whether that's being tired impacts your performance. Can I adjust my sleep schedule? Does caffeine help? Does being dehydrated affect my performance? How hydrated do I have to be? Does being hungry affect my performance? Does being too full affect my performance? Do I have to have a snack like right before the game, but then make sure I don't eat anything too much? And a lot of people have the attitude of sometimes I just play better, sometimes I just play worse, without trying to identify the cause. If you can find a day where you played really well, and then figure out what it was about that day, like maybe you were less stressed, maybe you finished a big project, right? And therefore you were less stressed, so it was easier for you to play better because that source of stress was gone. And then you get into sort of mindfulness training, so you can take some deep breaths and make yourself feel less stressed, and that helps. Well, yeah, there's a lot of research that goes into figuring it out in top sports, which is why I use those examples. This is something that is literally good for everyone. What if my DPS player plays better when he's hungover because he doesn't clutter comms, hypothetically? Everyone could just mute him. There are 3 game 3 questions here that I thought I got the order so bad today. Holding boss for the curse makes a lot of sense, but was Auction controlling vision optimally to allow for this play? Nick dies to 5-man collapse. Is that related to Auction's current vision control or a different factor? So we have to go back. Let's go back. So we're holding boss for curse, so we get both at the same time. However, this is a little greedy. We also massively overcommit to this. Like, they didn't get it. We got the Q off in time. The boss is ours. There's nothing they can do. Holy Ground lasts long enough for the entire channel of the boss point. And we're just massively spit. Gasu is super far away. So I think it's okay to hold the boss point there. But people need to not necessarily leave. And it's not vision control, it's the problem. Like, it doesn't matter. We do need the cleanse to be next to the Tyrael, though. If we're going to make that play, we need the cleanse to be next to the Tyrael. If Yasuo was there, that fight is very different. We have Ancestral up. You know, Nick might get Ancestral. It's a difference between... It's just a little bit of an execution problem. I don't think Wildheart is desperate here, by the way. I think they know they're going to lose every boss, but at least once we've gotten the boss, we can get a fight, and Wildheart thinks they can win the fights. And honestly, I mean, Wildheart did win the fight. We should have backed up and not let them have the fight. We shouldn't have used Sync there. Kind of went over this question already, which is probably why it's in the wrong order. Will you discuss how Wildheart approached boss fights and won a few into boss control comp? I mean, they just all in the Tyrael. And if they couldn't all in Tyrael, they all in the Rhaegar, right? If you all in the either part of the combo that enables the guaranteed boss control and they die, then the boss control doesn't matter anymore. Also, if you all in, since we're using some cooldowns for boss, if you all in, you're gonna have slightly more cooldowns, right? So even if you lose the boss, if you win the fight, then it can end up being fine. It was well played from Wildheart overall, honestly. Justin declared Rarity the best Uther in the league. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you think there is generally parity among healers across CCL? There's not parity among heroes from healer players in CCL. You know, last season, I think Valimar was the only person to actually win a game on Malf. Is Legacy? Was it Legacy or Valimar? I'm gonna have to check now. I'm slightly sad that I don't remember. Me. No, it was Valimar. So yeah, Legacy, I mean, Legacy went 2 and 3. Valimar played 11 games, won more of them. 9 games, 2. Like, you cannot argue that these players are all comparably good at Malf. Right? It's just, that would be an insane thing. It would just be an insane thing to argue. Well, Masquerade is a tank player. But, like, Rizzo played 5 games of... Again, this is double support. Valimar, 5 games of Uther. 1-1. Henning? Nope. 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 Weary Day? 5 games. 4 wins. Yasu, 13 games, nearly 80%. Storm BBJ? Banana, 8 games on Lucio. Didn't win a single one. This one's probably a little unfair. Banana's Lucio is pretty good, but he does a lot of ping-dependent tricks, and he really needed to not learn to do those in CCL. It's something I worked with him a lot in Season 1, actually. I was like, please don't do things that depend on ping. It's like a constant refrain. And his Season 1 movement was actually pretty good. But, like... I would say that there's not parity amongst the healer players in CCL if you account for hero pools. And you guys can see the win rate. These are all 0%. This is literally no games won for any of the players. Banana, Bergholt, Make, Nagram, and Heavy all lost every game they played with Lucio in Season 3 of CCL. So every healer player in CCL is good, but they're not all equally good on the same heroes, and some of them are actually unpickably bad on some heroes, and they keep picking them. And it's actually fine to, like, it's actually fine to be bad at a hero. Just don't pick it. It's that. Weary Day is probably currently the best Uther in CCL. Especially solo support Uther. We're gonna swap to season 4. Season 4 won't have a lot of stats. Yeah, he one game won versus one game lost. Wait, is the best Uther? But you can see, you saw his win rate in season 1 was 80% as well. He went 4-1 on the hero. I would argue that Weary Day is currently the best solo support Uther player in CCL. Given the Varian Stukov combo, is High 5 still the best pick for the Lucio 10? I don't think so. You can't High 5 into a Stukov puddle, because if you run over the silence puddle, it cancels the High 5 unless you can already hit them. So if they nail this, right? If they get the taunt into the puddle down, then High 5 should never land on that target. Maev, you know, if Maev gets charged and she Ds, then it creates some space. There's a lot of things that can happen. I do think Sound Barrier is a little awkward into Varian, though, because he went Mortal Strike, but this could have just as easily been Shield Break. Shield Break really screws Sound Barrier. Like, a lot. So... High 5 also has the arguably the better 20 in Mixing Fire, even though it was nerfed. And there's some stuff that's still like good. If Stukov's not in range, or if Silence is used for something else, you can even... I think we even saw one game of CCL where someone made an insane play into Gust and like high-fived everyone on their team as they thought Gust was going to be cast, and no one got gusted. Right? Stuff like that. You can also... If the Stukov is positioned poorly, you can boop the Silence and then High 5 out to the target. It sort of saves you. Lucio precleanse with High 5 require too much coordination? No. Lucio precleanse with High 5 is something that happens all the time in competitive. It's also worth noting that because Lucio gets the unstoppable, sometimes Lucio can just R to someone so that he can get unstoppable, and that he can R to someone who's in a silence puddle and he's already unstoppable. So you can use 2 charges of R to counterplay the silence puddle, which I think actually Jude does once this game. But like, this is the perfect scenario where you can just see that there's nothing. Lucio's channeling, but even if Lucio was here, nothing he did would have mattered. Don't show me the replay. Okay. Fast forward to the next team fight. So here, Silence Puddle was used to interrupt, right? So now Lucio can just easily High 5 a taunt if it comes. Not even a problem, because Silence Puddle's on cooldown. Now we're backing up. Lapper's out. Oh, there. I think, yeah, it's right here. Check this out. So he instantly Rs before the puddle even comes down. So stuff like that is still going to be possible. And then again, there's the trick where you can R to someone who's nearby and then R to the teammate who's in the silence, and then it'll still work. So slow mode this, please. That was too fast. Sorry, we're already on the next question. Game 4. I think this is the first Sergeant Hammer game we've seen this season, which, to answer a question someone else asked, do you think we'll see Hammer this season from teams besides Oxygen? Yes. sort of a cop-out at this point, but it looked great. Can you do a short run on how strong you feel the hero is, if how teams should adjust their approach to the game with Hammer in it? How do you feel Diamond and Storm did with these adjustments? Hammer is an interesting hero. Hammer was, of course, reworked, wasn't meta, and then 6 months later became meta because she was a counter to Tracer, and Tracer was extremely meta. But then people were playing so much Hammer that they just realized, oh man, Hammer's good. Wait, Hammer can do this? Hammer can do this. Wait, we need to be playing more Hammer. And then everyone learned to play Hammer. It was literally MSB 2018 when Rich sort of showed the world how OP Hammer was, that everyone started playing Hammer in HGC. And Hammer, honestly, wasn't nerfed that much between then and now. The only reason Oxygen didn't play Hammer is because after we lost Priz, Drata didn't know how to play it, Madara didn't know how to play it, and neither of them wanted to learn how to play it. It's not a terribly difficult hero, but they just didn't. The team didn't want to play it, so I was like, okay. Like, there's plenty of strong heroes in the game, right? There's plenty of strong heroes in the game. You're not going to be able to be equally proficient on all of them, unless you know life hots like 24/7. So learn to play things that you actually want to be playing is not necessarily the worst advice in the world. And then Hammer was buffed, right? I thought Hammer was totally fine and viable in a wide variety of drafts, and then Hammer was buffed. And it is, she has different playstyles. She has 3 pretty viable builds. All of her talents have some niche that they're good in. So if you play a lot of her, you can actually adjust to some scenarios, even in some cases, some counters to her. With the Leech at 4, she basically just wants to get to 4 and then slowly work down a building alone in a side lane, and you rest of the team manages the map. It's kind of like offlaning. When it's not an actual offlaner, we call it anchoring. But yeah, like, you guys are going to see more Hammer play, and hopefully we will see some counters. If anyone wants to know what the best counters to Hammer are, all you have to do is draft it against Oxygen in an actual game, and we'll show you. But I don't know if I want to give that information away for free. Best counter is to ban it. Banning it is a hard counter. I have yet to ever find a way around someone banning Hammer when we wanted to pick it. It's actually OP. It should be nerfed. I wonder, what would HOTS drafting be like if you could sacrifice a ban to anti-ban? Like, instead of banning a hero, you could just be like, I would like to take away one of the enemy team's bans instead. Oh man. In my mind, that was so funny. I hope everyone else is laughing too. What tools do you need to draft Diamond Hand Game 4 draft where there are a ton of save tools? So the save tools we're talking about, of course, are Falling Sword, Deckard stuff, Bunker, Chromie Time Trap. So when you're into a lot of buttons that can prevent death, you need to learn to take 2 stage fights, or have some sort of isolation tool. So Lauber, a lot of people probably flamed him for this, but Haymaker was actually a really good pick this game, in my opinion. When you have this many save tools, knocking the kill target away from all the save tools it's such a good idea. It's a problem. But what do I mean by 2-stage fight? 2-stage fight is your cooldowns are like 10 to 12 seconds. So you go in, you don't hard commit for a kill, but you look for a kill, you stun some people, you do some damage, they are forced to use a save tool to not die, you back up, you wait till all your cooldowns are back up, and 8 seconds later you start posturing again, so your 10 or 12 second cooldowns will be up when you find the opportunity, and you go again, and their 60-second cooldown or 80-second cooldown or whatever is not going to be back up. That's the gist of a 2-stage fight. You need to either be able to isolate, you need to be able to knock away. So, like, for instance, one of the things that people did a lot back in the day was they would use Falstad Gust and they'd pair it with something like Stitch's Gorge. So you would gorge one person, Falstad would gust everyone else away, and then that person is dead, guaranteed. That's a very old combo. So you need some way to guarantee isolation away from the save tool, all of the save tools, if there's more than one, or you need to play fights slow enough that the save tools all go on cooldown and your cooldowns come back. But mostly we just saw Storm run in and die. So, I mean, that's not fair. Anduin didn't die. Ming didn't die. But Storm went very hard. And didn't play around the isolation and didn't play around the cooldowns. That's a problem. They actually do have a cleanse, for the record. They have 2 seconds unstoppable from Falling Sword. So yeah, that game was never going to be anything but hard. Game 5. Do you think this is a better AA Falstad game? Can you go over when you think you should pick AA Falstad? Yeah. Honestly, I think AA Falstad should be the default. Like, the way Falstad plays, where he's just hitting minions all game, and frequently he's actually split pushing, if you're ever going to be hitting buildings a good portion of the game, and that's contributing to your win con, which is literally always the case on Sky Temple, I think you should be AA build. At level 1, a Falstad with a wave who hits his active, if the enemy team is not counter pushing him, can just 100-0 a tower in the duration of his active. He has to be auto attack, he has to W it too, but like, that's really good. Like, you can get a tower at level 1 on Sky Temple with AA Falstad. And we already went over earlier, like, why every point of building damage on Sky Temple matters a lot. So, one could make the argument that you should literally always be AA build on Sky Temple if you're playing Falstad. But I think generally on the bigger maps where split pushing is going to be relevant, the one time you really want to go key build regardless is when your other damage dealer is magic based. So we had a game on All Track Pass where we were Chromie Falstad, and we went last season where we went key build, and the spell damage armor shred from the Falstad significantly contributed to the Chromie's damage. But I think people would be better served not always going key build. Just an opinion. Who is your favorite split pusher this season? Why is it Gotbill's Genji? To rephrase, can you discuss the dynamic of Diamond Hand versus Storm Series a bit with an eye towards how Diamond Hand approached their macro play? Diamond Hand just has very coordinated macro play. For those of you who don't know, I used to coach Nintori when he was on Scythe Esports. I was always very impressed with Nintori's sort of macro sense. Obviously, I worked with Heavy when he was on Oxygen. They both have a good sense for macro. So, and they haven't changed their roster, right? Pretty much it's the same core. So it's something that they've been working on pretty hard. And you can literally see the week-to-week improvement if you go back and watch their games from last season of them just actually getting good rotates in, catching waves, leaving. One thing we haven't seen yet that I would like to see actually is Genji's doing wave stacking, which is something Snitch used to do. Basically, as a Genji, if you're going to rotate to a fight, you just E the archer minions and kill the archer minions and then leave the lane, leaving the melee minions alive. And if you win the fight and the enemy team doesn't go back and soak that lane right away, your next wave coming in will stack, clear the enemy team's wave very quickly, and then you'll have 6 archers all push up and start hitting a wall. It's really good to stack waves as Genji because you can pretty much just go to a lane, stack the wave, and then leave. But it's just a lot of little things that Diamond Hands has gotten very good at coordinating because same roster, right? Even same hero pools. It's not like they've adjusted their meta very much. Yeah, it's very common in other MOBAs to wave stack, but it is very uncommon in Heroes of the Storm, and it should not be because there are many heroes that can stack a wave. Like Dahaka can stack a wave and then global in. Right, like if the enemy offlaner forces prio by just leaving the lane to sort of counterplay the global, you can stack the wave and then burrow, and you'll not only stack the wave, you'll still have prio. Like, we don't see it. Granite Gaming versus CM. All right. It just depends. Sometimes it's substantially better to stack the wave and miss, because you're only missing 3 minions worth of experience, right? The mage minion doesn't give any experience, and you're killing all 3 range minions, so you're missing 3 minions worth of experience in order to, best case scenario, in the mid game, get the entire front wall. Seems good. I don't know. So Granite Gaming conceded their match this week. They forfeited it at the last minute. I'm gonna give you guys some publicly available details, and you guys can make a decision in your own minds, at least, about how bad you think the situation was. So, first thing, players are required to sign a contract saying that they will make themselves available to play their games. They get their schedule for when their games are going to happen at the beginning of the season, before the season even starts officially. The schedule was drawn up. So Granite Gaming knew they were going to have to play second set on a Sunday. They asked for a reschedule on Thursday of this week. Now, in order to reschedule a match, all the teams need to agree. So the team that you're playing needs to agree, but also the team that you're swapping spots with. Both of those teams need to agree. And that can matter. If people made themselves available for their slot, if your first set, you make yourself available for like 3 to 4 hours, in case you think it goes all the way to game 5, and then you may not be available 5 hours later. You may have already made plans with an expectation that you'd be done by then. Right? So teams won't always be able to swap, especially if you ask them at the last minute, which last minute, Thursday is pretty last minute as far as rescheduling goes. They were joking on stream about the fact that they were going to forfeit, allegedly. I say allegedly because I didn't see it. I don't speak Swedish. And Poik deleted the VOD. So we don't know if that was in fact the case or not, that they were making light of it. But they did end up conceding roughly 20 minutes before their match was supposed to be played. If they knew on Thursday that they would be unable to play if they weren't rescheduled, then they should have conceded on Thursday and not 20 minutes before. And then the main Granite account tweeted that they asked for a reschedule and didn't get it, so they were forced to forfeit. Which, as I said, if you're forced to forfeit because your player can't make it, that's fine. Bear in mind, from my perspective, they also drafted a sub, which they want to be playing with. Quacknix is someone that they would like to play with. However, they knew Quacknix would be largely unavailable. And from my perspective, we picked up Pirate Rum because we knew for a fact there was 1 week where we were going to need a sub for Draded. We picked up Pirate Rum because he had a similar hero pool, and because Madara wanted to play with him. Right? So there was already sort of a relationship there, which is a really good thing to have when someone's subbing in. They're already friendly with someone on the team. It just makes it a little bit easier to slot them in. We picked up Pirate Rum nearly 3 months before we needed to sub him in for one set, and we knew we were going to need him. So to me, that's the standard. That's the professional. If you are picking up someone as a sub, they need to actually be able to sub, which means they should be available when other players aren't, as opposed to not available for basically the same reason, which is that it's late in the EU. That's a problem, in my mind, right? And then this is their response, right? We tried to reschedule the game days, but got declined. Problem could have been solved. They're essentially blaming CCL for not rescheduling the games, even though the rescheduling policy is that all the teams need to agree. Right? And then it's like, we tried to reschedule and got declined. So this response, more than the actual forfeiting, is what I think really made people very angry at Granite. Because Storm had to concede a match last season, but Storm was conceding because 2 of their players were traveling. So they only have 1 allowed sub, so that's a problem. And they were traveling. They knew travel plans in advance. They warned CCL in advance that if a swap couldn't be made, because they also asked for a swap, if a swap couldn't be made, they would be forced to forfeit. That match, by the way, had a huge impact on standings. Literally, it had changed the map score, and it changed which teams were like 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Because they got a 3-0. Now maybe the team that playing them would have been 3-0 anyway. We can't say that one way or the other. But at least Storm knew in advance and warned in advance. If they knew Thursday they weren't going to be able to play, they should have forfeited on Thursday. Maybe CCL could have found something else to do with that time slot. So that's huge. Also, from a sponsorship point of view, professional standards matter a lot, as do metrics. And just in terms of making business deals, let's say you're going to a sponsor and someone's like, yes, I love HOTS, I want to sponsor this. And their friend who doesn't like HOTS, who just looks at numbers, is like, why was your broadcast 3 hours shorter on this day? That's weird. And then you have to explain the story of, well, we had a team concede. Oh, there's no provision in place that teams have to play. Oh, there is. They just ignored it. What? They did what now? It damages the professional credibility of the league to sponsors to have forfeits like this happen with no warning. That's a massive problem. So I'm actually gonna this is Grubby Stream Tats for Sunday, May 8th, which is week 2. And it starts at 6 UTC, Universal Coordinated Time. So you can see we start out basically nothing. We go up to a good peak of 3,006 viewers. This is the break, the 15-minute interview. And then it sort of, trickles off. And I think here is where the last game was played. And then this is Grubby streaming his own personal hot stream afterwards. So a good number of hours, right? 4.5 hours of HOTS content was viewed. We had 2133 average viewers, stream performance. By the way, during the second set of this week, the prize pool got basically $100 donated. So the very first set of week 1, someone donated like $3,000 and the prize pool went from 1K to 4K. And then it's been a trickle in. Basically every set gets about $100 of live donations while people are, watching the games, feeling it. And then this, bear in mind, Diamond Hands went all the way to game 5, right? So here's the start of the stream again at 6 o'clock. This is 2 hours or 3 hours of HOTS content. This is the peak viewership. This is when the series is getting really intense. And this is Granite Gaming conceded. And Grubby started doing his own personal hot stream. So this peak of 3,100 viewers, same thing for the peak here, could have stayed. We could have had all of these extra viewing hours for the set, which would have benefited the league, it would have benefited their metrics, and it would have benefited the prize pool because people donate to it. So on average, them conceding cost us, you can see like 22,000 hours were viewed this stream. This one was actually close to 20, yeah. See, bear in mind, this is 2 sets that were both like 3-0 or 3-1. This is 1 best of 5 and then Grubby's stream. So the damage is a little theoretical in that sense. You can make comparisons between the same days. On average, I would feel safe to say the prize pool lost about $100 worth of donations. Maybe those donations will happen later anyway, because maybe the same people will just donate just on a different day. We definitely lost viewership hours. There's no debate about that. We obviously lost viewership hours as a league. Will those viewership hours impact sponsorship opportunities? Maybe. And then today, Granite's owner posted in the CCL, official CCL Discord, an actual apology. Me as an owner of Granite Gaming wants to apologize to everyone working with this, putting time into this, all of their org owners and players, the league, and all sponsors. I have talked to the team and this is not what I wanted, and they understand that what happened is not okay. Can't say more than I am really sorry. Have a great evening, day, night. That is a genuine apology that I appreciate. I would have appreciated it a lot more if it had happened on Sunday as opposed to trying to blame CCL. Those are the facts. I know a lot of people had questions about how I felt about it. People have been messaging me on Discord saying, "Hey, I'm afraid to post this publicly, but what do you think of what happened with Granite? Do you think something should be done?" I'm not going to answer that. Whether or not something is done is up to CCL. It's up to Wisdom. But I really don't like Granite's attitude about it. And it took them 4 days to come around to being like, oh, this was not professional. We massively screwed up. On a lighter note, thoughts on the ketchup meta? I'm gonna be honest, I don't like ketchup if it has sugar in it. Yeah, I really don't like ketchup with sugar added to it. I think it tastes grossly sweet. I actually make my own ketchup because my wife loves ketchup and I can't stand most store-bought brands. I will also add a little bit of chipotle to my ketchup, so I get like a spicy, smoky thing going on. I really like spicy and smoked tomatoes, however you want to get them there. So, yeah, I make my own. I make my own ketchup. That's my thought on the ketchup meta. Is ketchup is great as long as you make it yourself. Is there even ketchup when there's no sugar in it? Isn't that just tomato sauce? Actually, little culinary tip for you guys. The reason people add sugar to tomato sauce is to get rid of the vinegary taste, or sort of counterbalance the vinegary taste. However, properly made tomato sauces are roasted for many hours, and because vinegar is a fairly volatile molecule, it boils off, and so you don't have to add sugar to your tomato sauce. But a lot of people, like a lot of instant tomato sauce recipes where you just like cook the tomatoes in a pan to get a little bit of the water out, and then you blend them, recommend adding a little bit of sugar. So yeah, I think tomato ketchup is smooth, like completely smooth, no chunks, and doesn't have that deep tomato flavor. Like you won't find a tomato paste in a lot of ketchup recipes. It'll just be like a tomato puree. It won't have the intensity of the flavor. I feel like the lack of CCL comment are fine when they acted so fast on Cura drafting with funds, when they came out saying they really care about metrics and growing for sponsors, then this happens and they just roll their eyes. I mean, CCL hasn't made an official response yet, right? I don't know what CCL's official response is going to be. Maybe it'll be good. Good tasting tomatoes can be hard to find as well. False. Here's an actual pro tomato tip, guys. You guys ready for this? Tomatoes don't travel well, and they cannot be refrigerated. There's actually a compound in tomatoes that causes them to taste like tomatoes. That compound, it's an enzyme, turns off if tomatoes go below a certain temperature and never turns back on. Never. So you actually can't refrigerate tomatoes and have them taste like tomatoes anymore, which means that you can't transport them for very long or very far before they start going bad because of refrigeration. Also, tomatoes are really good when they're freshly ripe, but in order to transport them, because of this refrigeration issue, you have to pick them before they're ripe. And most tomatoes are actually artificially ripened, but with ethylene gas, so they won't taste the same. So the best tomatoes you can get at a supermarket are canned, because canned tomatoes are picked when they're actually ripe, immediately processed, and put in the can. The best tomatoes you can get are not fresh tomatoes, unless you go to like a local farmer's market or something. The best tomatoes you can get are canned tomatoes, which is great because then you can just always have tomatoes around. You can just buy them by the can. It's fantastic. Given the current balance of the game, do you think... Given the current balance of the game, do you think it's best if teams have their playmaker star player be in a specific role? I hate this question because HOTS is a team-based game. There is literally nothing anyone has ever done in any game of competitive HOTS, well, maybe one thing, that they just did on their own. It's all stuff that is enabled by the team working together to achieve things. The exception that immediately came to mind when I was wanting to make a blanket statement was Poik 100-0 Psalm with the melee, the max range wave of force repulsion combo. That's the thing that immediately came to mind. So sometimes players do make individual plays, and they do like the majority of the work, but a lot of that is facilitated by someone else. Even the Poik play, it was a little bit facilitated by being able to know where the Hanzo was, so he could do the combo from out of vision. Right? It's not like Li Ming has a vision tool. So I don't think that there's ever been a version of the game balance. Maybe when Illidan was OP and Illidan can like 1v5. But in the current balance of the game, I think that just you're going to win more games if you play with your team and don't try to be a playmaker necessarily. And it's a fuzzy line. Like, what is... If your tank gets a good stun and then your DPS falls up, whose play was that? If... you go in as Tyrael and try to get the Sanct off, and you fail because you get Lucio booped, and then the Muradin zones away the healer so that you can't get the Tyrael can't be saved, and everyone turns on the Tyrael. Whose play was that? Like the Muradin, the Tyrael death wouldn't have happened without the Tyrael going in. It wouldn't have happened without the Muradin zoning away the enemy team support. It wouldn't happen without the Lucio boop, and it wouldn't happen without the damage all focusing the Tyrael. Whose play was that? Like seriously, I don't know. Like you can explain what happened and give credit for each individual action to a specific person, but the result was the result of what everyone did. And I think that's why, personally, that's why I like HOTS better than other MOBAs. In other MOBAs, you can definitely be like, oh yeah, that guy did all the work. Like, maybe people fed him all game, but in the end of the game, that guy won the game for that team. I don't like that. If I wanted to, play a game where it was all on me, I would play a single-player game. I really like the fact that HOTS is very, 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 very team-based. So, take that as you will. That's where I'm at. That was the third episode of Inside the CCL. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys ask more questions next week. This one did not end up being 3 hours. It ended up being 2.5, which is decent still. There's been less questions, but they've been so much more in depth that it takes a little bit longer to answer them. So I appreciate that from you guys. Remember, this is a stream we never lose. This is a stream where we never lose. We always win, or we learn something. Learning is always a win. Have a good night, everyone.